The Commemorative Air Force proudly honors those who built, serviced, and flew U.S. military aircraft that helped to preserve freedom and democracy around the world. The American Combat Airman Hall of Fame includes Americans who served in the air during any war or conflict and who distinguished themselves through personal sacrifice, courage under fire, and faithfulness to their country. This year, the Commemorative Air Force is proud to add 8 more names to its distinguished list of inductees in the American Combat Airman Hall of Fame. Lieutenant Colonel John F. Bolt, United States Marine Corps. Brigadier General Frank L. Gaylor, United States Air Force. Command Master Chief Petty Officer Glenn H. Lane, United States Navy. Lieutenant Colonel Don S. Lopez, United States Air Force. First Lieutenant James F. Luma, Royal Canadian Air Force, United States Army Air Forces. Brigadier General Robert L. Scott, United States Air Force. Brigadier General William W. Spruance, United States Air Force. Naval Fighter Squadron, VF-15. The Commemorative Air Force is proud to induct Lieutenant Colonel John Bolt of the United States Marine Corps into the American Combat Airman Hall of Fame. John Bolt became the only Marine to make ace in both World War II and the Korean War. As part of VMF 214, the legendary Black Sheep Squadron, commanded by Colonel Pappy Boyington, he achieved 6 victories over the Japanese, and later in the skies over Korea, downed 6 communist MiG-15s. Serving several years as an instructor in the U.S., Bolt was finally sent to the Pacific Theater in 1943. Flying with VMF 214, Bolt's most memorable mission occurred on October 16, 1943, when he spotted a convoy of Japanese barges. Without orders and flying alone, Bolt decided to strafe the barges. Making pass after pass at the troop-laden barges, he expended all of his .50 caliber ammunition with devastating effects. Elated with his victory, Bolt returned to his home base. Back at base, Colonel Boyington promptly reprimanded Bolt for his actions. Only a personal intervention by Admiral Halsey saved the spirited pilot. After World War II, Bolt continued to fly for the Marine Corps. In November 1952, he was transferred to VMF 211 in Korea, where he flew 94 missions in the F-9F Panther jet. A desire to engage enemy MiGs, however, led Bolt to arrange for an exchange officer tour with an Air Force squadron, leading to his first jet victory on May 16, 1953. 5 more victories followed before the end of the war. After the Korean War, Bolt stayed in the Marines, eventually commanding VMA 214, his old Black Sheep Squadron. Lieutenant Colonel John Bolt retired after more than 20 years' service in the Marine Corps. Among his numerous decorations are the Navy Cross, 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, and 3 Air Medals. The Commemorative Air Force is proud to induct Brigadier General Frank L. Gaylor of the United States Air Force into the American Combat Airman Hall of Fame. Frank Gaylor first began his flying career training on twin-engine B-25 Mitchell bombers. After a short time, Gaylor was transferred to fighters. Designated as a replacement pilot for the European Theater of Operations, Gaylor was sent to England in 1944, where he joined the 357th Fighter Group. In November of 1944, Gaylor was escorting bombers into the Third Reich when he spotted 2 Focke-Wulf 190 fighters. As he plunged into a wild dogfight with the 2 enemy aircraft, his bullets found their mark. Hit in numerous locations, the lead Focke-Wulf plowed into its wingman, both aircraft crashing to earth. Gaylor finishes the story in his own words.
Seeing another flight of 2 coming at me, I flew head-on into the 2. But I thought they were not ME-109s because of the air scoop position, so I didn't fire. They did, and I was hit in the shoulder as my cockpit shattered. I bailed out over Kassel.
Gaylor spent the rest of the war as a POW in Stalag Luft 1. What he did not know was that he had been shot down by a P-51 from the 352nd Fighter Group. After numerous postings, Gaylor commanded the 35th Tactical Fighter Wing in Vietnam. General Gaylor's many military decorations include the Legion of Merit with 2 oak leaf clusters, the Distinguished Flying Cross with oak leaf cluster, the Air Medal with 20 oak leaf clusters, and the Purple Heart. The Commemorative Air Force is proud to induct Command Master Chief Petty Officer Glenn H. Lane of the United States Navy into the American Combat Airman Hall of Fame. A child of the Great Depression, Glenn Lane decided to enlist in the United States Navy in 1939. After training, he was assigned to Observation Squadron 1 on board the USS Arizona as a radio man 3rd class. Sunday, December 7, 1941, Lane was preparing to go to the showers when he heard explosions from nearby Ford Island. He quickly realized that the explosions were from bombs and that the aircraft dropping the bombs were Japanese. Shouting the alarm to men below, Lane watched in disbelief as Val dive bombers and Kate torpedo aircraft attacked U.S. ships in the harbor. From his battle station aboard the USS Arizona, Lane tried to fight the many fires that broke out. However, a massive explosion shook the ship, knocking Lane overboard. Even though Lane was covered with oil, badly burned, and was wounded by shrapnel, he managed to swim to the battleship USS Nevada. Lane later saw duty in the Pacific, and later on the East Coast as the radio and radar operator in Grumman TBF anti-submarine aircraft. Discharged from the Navy in March 1946, Lane re-enlisted in 1947 because the Navy was short of trained aviation electronics technicians. After 3 decades in the Navy, Glenn Lane retired as a Command Master Chief Petty Officer in 1969 with 9 commendations from his superior officers. The Commemorative Air Force is proud to induct Lieutenant Colonel Don S. Lopez of the United States Air Force into the American Combat Airman Hall of Fame. Growing up in Brooklyn, New York, Don Lopez lived close to Floyd Bennett Field, where the skies were alive with famous aircraft of the day. These aircraft left their mark on the young boy. After a distinguished career in the United States Air Force, Lopez became Deputy Director of the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. Enlisting in the Army Air Force in June 1942, Lopez was sent overseas to join the 23rd Fighter Group. His 9th combat mission, December 12, 1943, was unforgettable. Scrambling to intercept Japanese bombers and fighters, Lopez spotted a Japanese Oscar fighter below him. Diving towards the enemy aircraft, Lopez moved in for a head-on pass. In a high-speed game of chicken, neither pilot wavered until, with a heavy impact, the 2 aircraft collided. The left wing of Lopez's P-40 was shortened by 3 feet because of the blow. The Oscar, minus most of its right wing, tumbled out of control and crashed. Don Lopez had just earned the first of his 5 victories in the air. At the end of the war, Lopez attended the Air Force Test Pilot School and spent almost 6 years testing fighters. He also completed a short combat tour, flying North American F-86s in Korea. In 1972, he joined the Smithsonian, and in 1983 was appointed Deputy Director of the National Air and Space Museum. His decorations include the Silver Star, the Distinguished Flying Cross with 1 oak leaf cluster, and 3 Air Medals. The Commemorative Air Force is proud to induct First Lieutenant James F. Luma of the Royal Canadian Air Force, United States Army Air Forces into the American Combat Airman Hall of Fame. Through contact with the Clayton Knight Committee, James Luma decided to join the Royal Canadian Air Force. In July 1941, he went to Canada to receive flight training. After additional training, he was posted to England, where he was trained as a night intruder pilot. Night intruder pilots flew Mosquito fighter bombers over occupied Europe, but their aircraft were not equipped with radar. Flying a de Havilland Mosquito over the dark skies of occupied Europe, James Luma downed 5 German aircraft and destroyed 2 more on the ground, making him one of the most successful night fighter pilots in the RCAF. After his tour with the RCAF, Luma transferred to the United States Army Air Force and continued to fly Mosquitoes with a weather reconnaissance unit. Luma's most memorable night intruder mission occurred in March 1944. Over southern France, near the Spanish border, Luma spotted an enemy aircraft, closed quickly, and shot it down on the first pass. Exhilaration over the victory quickly turned to concern as a coolant leak caused by debris from the German fighter caused the starboard engine to overheat. A Mosquito on one engine, low and deep in occupied France, was vulnerable to flak and fighters. However, Luma's flying skills got him safely back to England. After the war, James Luma continued to fly as a flight instructor in the Indonesian Air Force, and later as a commercial pilot for foreign airlines in Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and the Far East. For his distinguished service in the service of 2 countries, he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross with clusters from both the United States and Great Britain. In 1994, he learned he also had been awarded the Silver Star. The Commemorative Air Force is proud to induct Brigadier General Robert L. Scott of the United States Air Force into the American Combat Airman Hall of Fame. Robert L. Scott graduated from the U.S. Military Academy in 1932. In 1934, he began flying airmail routes. Flying these hazardous routes in antiquated biplanes provided Scott with priceless experience in navigation and all-weather flying that helped him later in his career. Assigned to the Ferry Command, forerunner of the famous Air Transport Command, Scott flew supplies to China. He befriended General Claire Chennault, commander of the Flying Tigers, and convinced Chennault to loan him a P-40 for occasional forays against the Japanese. When the Flying Tigers disbanded in 1942, General Chennault gave Scott command of the new 23rd Fighter Group. After flying 388 combat missions, he returned to the United States for a war bond tour. Charles Scribner, the famous publisher, thought Scott's experiences in China would make a good story and asked him to write a book. God Is My Co-Pilot became one of the most famous books of the war, even becoming a movie. After the war, Scott commanded the Jet Fighter School at Williams Air Force Base in Arizona, the 36th Fighter Bomber Wing in Germany, then graduated from the National War College in 1954. Scott retired from the Air Force in 1957. For his combat record against the enemy, Scott received 2 Silver Stars, 3 Distinguished Flying Crosses, and 3 Air Medals. The Commemorative Air Force is proud to induct Brigadier General William W. Spruance of the United States Air Force into the American Combat Airman Hall of Fame. William Spruance became one of the originators of the concept of using light aircraft for artillery spotting and observation. Flew more than 300 missions as a hump pilot in World War II, and was one of the founders of the Delaware Air National Guard. But it is a crash in a T-33 that inspired his life's work. Flying in the back seat of a T-33 jet in 1961, Spruance and a Delaware National Guard pilot were involved in a horrendous flying accident. Hurtling down the runway, the aircraft lost power when it was only 150 feet in the air. Too low to eject, Spruance and the pilot both elected to ride the plane in. The aircraft slammed into the runway at over 140 miles per hour, skidded across the tarmac, and into a grove of trees. Using the training he had learned in flight school, Spruance pulled himself from the burning wreckage. Although burned over 30% of his body, Spruance lived to tell his story. Off and on for the next 2 years, Spruance endured 36 separate operations. Instead of retiring, Spruance used the accident to further his military career. He has now given over 1,500 lectures on the subject of crash survival. He even has his own website devoted to the subject. Spruance's one goal is to provide people, both civilian and military, with the information they need to survive any type of crash. Among his military decorations are 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses and 2 Air Medals. The Commemorative Air Force is proud to induct Naval Fighter Squadron VF-15 into the American Combat Airman Hall of Fame. With 310 aerial victories, 348 aircraft destroyed on the ground, and 26 aces, VF-15 will most likely rank as the most successful Navy fighter squadron in history. Established on September 1, 1943, with Lieutenant Commander David McCampbell as commanding officer, the F-6F Hellcat-equipped squadron embarked on the USS Essex for its first combat tour in mid-1944. VF-15 participated in all the fast carrier fleet offensives of the second half of 1944. In June, it scored for the first time, achieving 8 aerial victories. Later in the month, during the famous Marianas Turkey Shoot, VF-15 set the record for the most enemy aircraft downed in a day, with 68.5 confirmed victories. By October, VF-15 had 200 victories in the air, and during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, they added 43 more. Included in this number were Commander McCampbell's 9 victories, the highest number of enemy aircraft shot down in a day by any American during World War II. The fabled 15, as they were known throughout the fleet, had established an unassailable record for one 6-month tour. Through a combination of superior leadership, airmanship, and opportunity, the fighter squadron had achieved remarkable success. Commander McCampbell ended the tour with 34 victories, making him the Navy's all-time ace. Awarded the Medal of Honor for his leadership and skill, McCampbell was the only F-6F Hellcat pilot so honored.